In October 1940, the first racial law was passed, whereby Jews were forbidden to run a business. They were only allowed to shop during certain times of the day. Jews were not allowed to go to public parks or cinemas or go out after the curfew. And later, the law would also force all Jews over the age of 6 to wear a yellow star with the word juif, Jew in French. But still my family continued to live relatively peacefully in this small village. A year later, in October 1941, further racial laws were passed, gradually taking away more and more basic human rights from the Jewish people. They were no longer allowed to hold religious services that year, but when the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, came around, my grandfather offered their remote farmhouse to be used as a synagogue. And here is my Uncle Jean telling us about that time.
The next day we emptied the whole house, the furniture, the top and the bottom, and then all the Jews in the area were notified they're going to be all the services. And by that time things were getting really bad. And the kids were not allowed in, there wasn't enough space, so we were outside and they took all the furniture out and all the people from that came, men and women, and they started praying and crying. It was a horrible scene because by that time, even though I was a kid, I still didn't know what was going on. I mean, I knew it was bad with the Germans, but nobody knew that they were that bad. Anyway, they prayed and prayed, and as a footnote, that all the people that prayed in that house, that Yom Kippur and that Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, there was just Mr. Russak and his son came back from a concentration camp, and then Paulette, myself, and Jack survived. And there must have been maybe over 100 people in that house. Nobody survived. Everybody consequently were all arrested and nobody came back.
Of the 100 people there, only 5 would survive the Holocaust. All the others would be deported to the concentration camps and never be seen again. Every year we commemorate Holocaust Memorial Day on the 27th of January, the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. And every year it has a different theme. In 2022, the theme is One Day. Was there one day which changed the course of my mother's life? Was it the day her brother managed to rescue her and her sister out of the camp at Poitiers? Or perhaps the day she was taken to the hospital and therefore escaped being arrested and sent to Auschwitz with her brother and sister? Or maybe it was the day her name was found on a list and she was taken out of the convent and reunited with her older brothers. I have to say, it does make me smile when I think that if she hadn't been found on the list, she might have become a nun herself. And that does make me smile. Or maybe it was the day she came to England and met her new adoptive parents. Which day do you think was the one? My mother was not able to tell her story, so I do it for her. I do so to honor the memory of my family members who were murdered and to help people today understand the dangers of racism, anti-Semitism and hatred, and also to remind people why we should welcome refugees, especially children refugees, like my mother was, into our country. And after doing all my research, I was so amazed by my family story that it inspired me to write my novel, The Young Survivors.
I've got someone who asked how long it took you to conduct all of this research.
Yeah, I think it took about 3 years. I was working part-time then. And also it's a very emotional subject for me, obviously. So I did have to take breaks. And then towards the end, I'd written like 90% of it. And then I went to work for the Association of Jewish Refugees. And and I just thought, no, I have to write these other people's stories first. This is more important because they're elderly, you know, we really are against the clock. So I kind of put my own book to one side for the first 3 years that I was working at the AJR. And then I thought, no, it's time. I need to finish it now. So I sat down and finished it. But yeah, it was difficult. And I have to say that one thing I did was, so there were a few gaps in the story. As I said, like, I don't know anything about the convent that my mother was in, and my mother didn't have any memories at all. So from the time that she was on her own, so before she was with her brothers who were able to tell me what happened, and then she was with Denise who was able to tell me what happened. But then when she went into the convent, there's like a whole year that there's no one to tell me what happened. So I did have to fill in some gaps, do research about what happened to other people, and assume that the same thing happened to her. So one thing that I did was I changed the names in the book, so they're not my family names. And actually that also made it easier for me to write, because if I'd been thinking while I was writing it that I'm writing about my mother and how she suffered, I would have been in bits, to be honest, and don't think I would have ever got it done. So I kind of put myself in the mindset that I was writing about a character, which made it a lot more doable, a lot easier on the emotions. Yeah, so I just wanted to explain that.
If you want to know what's coming up with Richmond Libraries, you can follow us. We are on Twitter at Richmond Libs, and we're on Facebook and Instagram as Richmond Libraries.